John, so I believe Spurrier years ago said 5-11, not very good. 5 wins. I mean, go back to preseason. We all make predictions. We all had them as a double-digit wins team. I don't know if you make official predictions before the season, but you couldn't have seen this season coming.
Oh no, I had him at 5-12.
Yeah, right.
Of course, I think. I had him at. I thought the ceiling would have been like 10 wins.
Right.
And then if a few things go wrong, then you get down to that. Could you see like, okay, could things go bad, 7 or 8 wins, right? Mm-hmm. But not this. And it's too hard to predict what happened to Jaden with all the injuries. Terry missing a guy who doesn't miss games, miss as many as he did, now coming off a holdout where you can see people missing games. But the amount of injuries was just staggering, and that if you knew how bad it was going to be there, then you could say like, oh, okay, it's going to be a horrible season. But that was the hard part. And then they just at times just didn't play well. So it was, I don't want to just put it all on the injuries because they didn't play well in a lot of moments where you still could have. So, but yeah, no, could have seen it as bad as.
Yeah, but you know what? That is an interesting point. So, listen, injuries I think were the biggest factor, but they weren't good outside of it also. So there are both. I see your point. Let's say, what do you think they could have maxed out with these injuries? What, 7 wins, maybe?
I think with these injuries, I think if they had hit 7, you say, wow, they did a really good job there, right?
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people point to San Francisco, which was great. They had a great year.
Mm-hmm.
It's tremendous what they did. They had 6 wins last year because they had so many injuries.
Oh yeah.
So you know what I mean. And so you can't just forget every other time they've gone. Where somebody goes through something but it was damn impressive what the 49ers did because that is really hard. But I think you look at I think it was also there's an indication of a couple things. One, some guys maybe not rising to the level they needed to yet. Some of their draft picks still developing, but also not at the level they needed yet. And then you can look at the Niners. Again, I look at the Niners, like their roster's been built over a number of years compared to just 2 here. And you know what I mean? So were they in position to probably win more than 7 with all these injuries? No, they weren't.
So,
they didn't have the roster. But that to me would have been maxed out, and not just a 7, not like a game like yesterday, but maybe more competitive in some other games. More so than as much as the win total, but more just like could they have been more competitive in games against Detroit, Seattle?
Way too many blowouts. Way too many blowouts. Even with all the injuries.
Yep.
The curious decision to kind of go with Josh down the stretch and not give Hartman a look. I'll give my explanation, then you give yours. My explanation is they just know there's no future, like zero. They already know that Sam Hartman's not an NFL player. He's there for maybe coaching. Maybe he's
he's good in the QB room.
He's a good QB room guy. He's Jaden's guy. Like they already know he's not an NFL quarterback. That's my answer.
Yeah, but the question we were asking last week was, then why is he on? Why are you paying him on the practice squad?
Just because of that, all of those things.
Hire him as a coach.
Well, they'll do that eventually. Yeah. But that's what they're doing right now.
It's. I don't think there's anything more than that.
Yeah.
So I think you put it. And why he's on the roster because he's a 4th QB, and maybe you can see does he develop at some point? Because I know in training camp did not have a great summer, but coming off the shoulder surgery. So does that get better throughout the year? And maybe you can develop because. If you like him, like the offense, he's good in that. You're right, he's good in that room. He's tight with Jaden.
Right.
I don't know that you're going to keep him around just for that reason because, there are other guys that Jaden is close to.
You get the benefit of the doubt, maybe 5 years from now.
And I also think Jaden is pretty much a guy that a lot of people can get closer to because that's just his personality. You know what I mean? I don't know that he needs just this guy is his only but. I think being good in that room, they really liked that room last year, and maybe you see he can develop, and then maybe you see that he didn't develop enough.
And, John, even though yesterday's game, mostly meaningless, it wasn't that for Josh Johnson. He was trying to get his 2nd win ever as an NFL starter. And, look, at the age of 39, he's showing the entire league why he's had so many jobs and had so many stops and has been able to play in the league so long because – he's capable. He must be good in the quarterback room. Talk about Johnson, and do you think he has a future either here or with another team next year?
I mean, I'm not going to bet against that guy being on the roster.
Yeah.
I think, it's funny because I was talking to him a little bit about this last week, just like how impressive it is to last as long as he has without ever being a full-time starter, and how difficult that is. Think about a lot of guys who've been the backups for a long time. They're either in one system forever, like Chase Daniel, and who barely played, but he was in one system and they liked him, and he was with Kansas City for such a long time. So they're either that, or they've been a former starter who has shown enough to like Ryan Fitzpatrick was a guy who lasted, which was impressive, but he would start a lot, and he would do enough to say, like, well, maybe he can start for us for a bridge, or he can back up. What Josh Johnson has done is incredible because he's only started, I think it was his 11th or 12th start yesterday.
Yeah.
And to do that at 39 it's impressive. And so, because you have to have something that teams want to say, like, what can he do? And he's a quick learner, but also, like, he's played in so many offenses, so you can get him in yours and get him up to speed.
And he won't embarrass you on the whole.
Right. And right, exactly. And then the other part, too, is when he was here the first time, 2018, and they went out and signed Mark Sanchez, Jay Gruden wanted Josh Johnson instead. And a big part of that, too, was if nothing else, he can make a play when things break down, and Sanchez could not. And we saw that in the one game Sanchez started, and then quickly Josh Johnson was the starter after that. So that element, too, definitely helps as well. But, his future here, I don't know. I do know, like I said, I mean, he's a really good guy to have around.
He's a survivor, man.
Yeah, he's a survivor. Now, could you get a young guy in that third row? Yes, of course. I think that's what ideally you would have hoped Hartman would have elevated to. But that's why Josh Johnson is last. And, like, you can see the emotion from him. That touchdown he scored yesterday was his first since 2018.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And then the first touchdown pass since 21. So, like, the emotion with that, and the guys were very happy for him because they know his journey. I mean, the dude played in like 3 different leagues outside the NFL, like the XFL, UFL, the AAF, or whatever.
Stuff you've never heard of. It's crazy.
It's pretty cool what he's done.
John, let's talk about the most pressing thing to me, which I think is the coaching situation, specifically the OC, the DC. I assume they're gonna at this point have to hire a new DC. Dan won't take it over, but who knows? But probably hire somebody, maybe a Raheem Morris. Who knows? The intriguing one is the Kingsbury thing, especially because this is a team that, going into the season, right, they don't leak. This team doesn't leak. And all of a sudden now we're starting to hear stories. I don't know if they're true or not true. But Kingsbury's future appears to be very much up in the air. What is your best guess on what's going on there?
Yeah, and I don't know that any quote-unquote leaks came from here. I can't say that. So, because especially when it comes to Adam Peters, very tight-lipped. So, but there's a couple of things. One, first, the offense, the injuries impacted the offense more than anything else, much more than the defense. And I know the defense had injuries and all that, but
defense is just bad.
Yeah, exactly. So you can look at that. I think it's hard to sit there and point to the coordinator and say this was the problem with the offense this year. Very hard. They were very good last year when they were healthy. And is his offense for everybody? No, it's not. For a variety of reasons, right? But there are definitely a lot of people who like it. And it's, you know what I mean? It's even in that building. And so I think it's not a traditional offense. So if you want to protect your quarterback more, you may want to, maybe that's why you go in a different direction. And say that because, like, his offense it's RPO based. So you have the run pass option, but you also have quarterback designed runs. That's why you're running out of the gun a lot of times. And, if you want to protect Jaden Daniels or your quarterbacks, maybe you look for a different kind of system, right? If that's what ultimately
How much
happens.
say do you think Jaden will have? The mom's clearly going on the record. She wants another Kingsbury year, which you assume it means Jaden is on board with that and would want that in a perfect world.
I believe he would be on board with that, but I don't want to put words in his mouth. But like that,
of course,
I don't.
How much factor is that in Adam Peters' mind? I know you're guessing, but
I think ultimately you have to do what you feel is best for the franchise. If you know what I mean, like I don't think you can go that route with that. Whatever the move is, it's got to be decided by like. Yes, I know he likes them.
Most players tend to know the coaches that they've worked with because they know them. You know what I mean?
They do, but there are. I would say this: there have been a couple of coordinators here in the past where players were not very happy with. So, and a couple of years ago, there was the case. But so I don't know that you can let him decide that at this point. If you feel like, yeah, I know your type, but just trust us, this is the best decision for you moving forward. Because like one thing I'd say about Jaden is I feel pretty confident he can operate, in a couple different systems because it's just kind of the way he studies, the way he works, et cetera. I think he would be okay.
If you had to bet, would you bet on them moving on?
What's your prediction? Kingsbury back or is he?
Yeah, just at the end of the day.
I don't like to predict unless I have stronger knowledge of what of like that happening. You know what I mean? Like because I think that's difficult for me to do that. But I would say it's a decision they definitely have to make, and he will explore head coaching jobs for sure, and there will be a handful out there. Now, how high he is on those lists, it's hard for me to say, but I think he'll get some interviews. And then you have the decision to make, and then I think it could also be influenced by who else comes free, who else might be available that maybe you think, like if they think someone else is a better fit going forward, then that, let's say Mike McDaniel comes through, whatever. Like if they felt like that was a better fit, maybe then you say, okay, then we can do this, So, but I think I would say this: it's a decision they have to make. I don't think it's a slam dunk like, oh, he's not getting a head coach job. Boom, here he comes, right? I think there's still
it's a 50-50 deal? I'm trying to put you on something.
Yeah, I mean, I guess. Anything would be 50-50, right? Yeah, I mean, so, but I do think it's something that they would have to make. I don't know that it's at the point where you say, like, oh, if he doesn't get it, he's gone. I haven't gotten that sense, right?
What are the DCs besides Raheem Morris?
Jeff Ulbrich, who is in Atlanta as well, has experience with Quinn. I think you want to look at a guy who has some level of experience calling plays. That would be my sense, right? Now, does that automatically mean it's going to go that way? No, but it's that would be the.
What are those guys' schemes? How are they different from DQs?
Well, with Raheem and Ulbrich, they've been in his system. So, like, there's a familiarity there. Now, I don't think you should just – I think you have to get a guy in here that you think can be a damn good DC, right? I think I
might argue a different scheme.
Well, you could. And I think – so then my question would be, like, say, like, I know the Jim Schwartz, if he's available, Brian Flores, who has not yet – received an extension from Minnesota. Right. The question I would have for them would be, because like they do different things than what Washington has done. And so are they both comfortable being in business together, knowing that like this is not the way he's operated with his defense? Is he going to be okay with that, right? Is it going to be in the heat of battle? Is it going to be okay? Am I going to have to, if for a defensive coach to be with a defensive-minded head coach, it helps to definitely have a similar vision. Right. I think the one thing with Quinn that you can look at over the years is he has adapted his defenses. So I think like he's open. I mean, he's done that 360 review of himself. He's open to change. But I do think like if you believe in what you're doing, and I don't know that the scheme was the issue here. I think it's within the scheme what is going on. You know what I mean? Like it's the attention to details. Do you have the players who adhere to those details, that are good enough to adhere? Do you have players that can cover up mistakes? Jaden Daniels, I talked to somebody earlier this year, was like, Jaden covered up a lot of sins on their roster last year.
Right.
But so, what I mean? You have that guy on defense who can do that. But
John,
they don't have that guy.
It needs to be a track record guy, though. This ain't the job for an up-and-comer.
No. That's right. That's why I say experienced play caller. Now, Seattle's defensive coordinator does not call the plays, and they're a very good defense. And he was someone who was interviewed here for the job before. Now I don't know. I have no clue, like if that would be a possibility. But you start looking at like who else would be out there that would be that could have that. But he hasn't called plays, but he's been in that role. But clearly Raheem would be a guy that you would look at because there's familiarity. And he's trusted him with that in that role before, and he did a good job as a DC and with the Rams. That's why he got a second chance as a head coach. So I think again, whether or not that happens, it clearly would make some sense. I don't think you want to hire him just for that because he's familiar. You have to hire him because he's really good, and I think Raheem does have a good track record in that role.
Yeah. All right, John, good stuff. We got to run. Appreciate the insight.
As always, man. Awesome. We'll get you on throughout the offseason. Always enjoy having you on.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, JK.
A lot more fun to talk about the offseason stuff this year, but thanks a lot, guys.
Yeah, thank you, buddy. Thank you.
Did put up the Junkies poll of the day, and it has to do with one of the topics we were talking about, Cliff Kingsbury. Do you want him to return? If you want to chime in, 1-800-636-1067. The Junkies poll of the day is sponsored by Surfside. Use the code JUNKS at store.statesidevodka.com. You get 25% off select merch. EB's wearing a Stateside Vodka hoodie. They've got T-shirts, hats, and more. Use that code JUNKS at store.statesidevodka.com. Cliff Kingsbury, the offensive coordinator, do you want him back running the offense next season?